Why I love the win or learn mentality is it's actually a very strategic mindset. It is all about moving forward.
Yes.
When I'm talking about beating myself up, when we're talking about quicksand, when we're talking about sitting at the the bottom of the vibrational scale, when we're talking about wearing that depression blanket, when we're talking about really just wallowing or sitting in that cycle of almost self-abuse, right? Where you're just constantly telling yourself what a, excuse my language, but what a piece of shit you are. And I've had that inner monologue. I had it most of my life. I was able to kind of overcome it for the most part. And then when the chips are down and it comes back, one, I want to say thank you for bringing that up because that's what transformation is. First of all, transformation is not linear. It's not, hey, wow, look, I transformed. I learned a lesson. Now I'm better. Woohoo! I'm never going to go back there again. It's a cycle, right? It's you learn the lessons, you implement them, you take a step back, you remember the tools, you remember the lesson, you try again, and you continually work on yourself, right? And you make mistakes.
Welcome back to the Dennison Download. You've got your host here, Jack Dennison, with his co-host, Kara Dennison.
Hey, look at you starting out the episode this time. How'd it feel? How'd it feel?
Trying it on.
Yeah,
Not so bad.
fit okay?
But okay. One size fits all.
Yeah, yeah. So we're going to be talking about something kind of cool today, huh?
Yeah, it's something that's really helped a lot of our program participants and a lot of people that we've worked with. So I'm really excited to share
And us. And us.
it. It works for us, yes, every day.
Yeah. So it's kind of a mindset thing.
It's a big mindset thing. It's something that we easily forget. I mean, so many of us probably have heard it most of our lives. We've probably even practiced it at moments, but from what I've seen is typically forget the tools that we have when the bullets start flying and things start happening where we start getting stressed, anxiety start coming in, and then our energy starts getting drained and we don't use our tools.
Yeah. Yeah. So why are we talking about it now? Um, I'll just be kind of honest with everyone. It's well, one, it's a mindset that we kind of adopted at the beginning of this year, 2022. And it's a lesson that I feel we continually need to learn over and over again. And for me personally, um, a lot of stuff has just happened recently in our business, right? We've had a lot of changes happen. Um, and we're ending the year. And frankly, our business, we had a lot of goals at the beginning of the year. And now that we're at the end of the year, we didn't necessarily hit all those goals.
Yeah,
And that kind of sucks.
sure.
And we've had to make a lot of tough decisions and rethink where we want to go in the new year for 2023. And at the beginning of the year, we didn't know, right? We didn't know that we were going to be going through this crazy medical journey. We didn't know that we were going to spend half the year, um, you know, trying to sort out a cancer diagnosis, figuring out what a tumor was going to be or not going to
Hmm.
be, um, and because of all of the things that had happened, we had to make some really tough decisions. And when those things go down, my default is to start beating myself up.
Same.
Yeah. And I think that's the default for a lot of people, right? And
Yeah.
um oh, I'm getting emotional again. Ooh, but
Well, something I want to jump in here, and then I talked about our with our coaching program recently. It's really when the anxiety start to build up and the doubt starts to creep in. I refer to it as the quicksand, and I borrowed it from a movie, The Replacements, great movie with Keanu Reeves and Gene Hackman, and really the character Keanu Reeves is talking about quicksand and how it starts with one thing, and then that one thing compounds into another thing and then to another thing. And then before you know it, you're just making mistakes left and right. And then you can't breathe, and then you can't move. And then you have inaction. Right. And I think that when things don't go our way, that quicksand can get you. especially if you aren't careful with where your thought patterns are going and you aren't intentional on how to guide yourself out of it. Because we all have tools, but do we choose to use them? Or do we find comfort in the quicksand?
Yeah.
Because I think for some, we do kind of find the quicksand comforting, at least parts of it,
Mhm.
right? Because at least there's nothing you got to do.
Yeah. And when things happen, like goals don't get met or mistakes happen, or you're in this feeling of quicksand, like you said, it almost kind of like you said, it almost feels comfortable, right? For me, it feels comfortable sitting at that bottom of the vibrational scale, right? That depression. Because I spent a lot of my life in depression, anxiety, in not liking myself, right? Beating myself up. And so when mistakes happen, when these things happen, when things don't break our way, it feels almost weirdly, it feels weird to say now, but just comfortable, just feeling depressed, feeling sad, sitting in that blanket of it. And what happens for me when I get there is I spiral and I start beating myself up even more. I start thinking I'm a failure. The imposter syndrome happens, and it gets even harder to get out of there because it piles on, right? Like I make one mistake and I start beating myself up, and then all of a sudden it's like Murphy's Law. One thing goes wrong, and, and it's like everything goes wrong. And then if you're a failure for one mistake, all of a sudden you're a failure for everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you climb out of that hole when it feels like you have all these boulders and rocks just sitting on your
Now you
chest?
see why I like the idea of quicksand.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you
And
just
it's
get
just pulling you
stuck and
down.
you pulling you
Yeah,
down. The harder you fight, the harder it pulls you.
yeah. So we adopted, and I'm glad that we're talking about it now because I need the reminder. I do, honestly, recently,
I
because
think everybody does.
yeah, I've been kind of beating myself up recently. So um we adopted a win or learn mentality. And I know you have a quote from someone, so go ahead.
Nelson Mandela,
Mhm.
pretty famous, once said, I never lose. I either win or I learn.
Yeah. So we kind of adopted this at the beginning of the year, and it really helped us get through. And when you brought this up to me again as a topic for this week's episode, I was like, yeah, like, oh God, I need this reminder. Like, I need this reminder. Because what am I doing beating myself up here? Just putting boulder after boulder and just letting the quicksand suck me down. Because what is the freaking point? What is the point of this? Right? Like what is the point of just continually calling myself a failure, beating myself up, and just drowning in this quicksand? Because it's not helping me, it's not helping you, it's not helping our business, it's not helping clients, it's not helping audience, it's not helping anyone. And it's definitely not helping me because all it does is it perpetuates the cycle of feeling like crap and being in that cocoon that we were talking about last week with Rebecca, or 2 weeks
Yeah.
ago.
It goes to show that when you're in a situation and things don't go how you hope, your default patterning or programming comes back out. And
Yeah.
we've all learned how to beat ourselves up really well.
Yeah.
Heck, most of life we practice it and telling ourselves what not to do, but it ends up we actually do it more because we tell ourselves, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. What happens? Then you're going to do it.
And then when I find myself beating myself up, then I beat myself up even more, right? Because I'm like, no, we're not doing this anymore. Why are you doing it? Right? And so then it just is this cycle. So the win or learn mentality, first of all, let's talk a little bit about what that is. Can you kind
Mhm.
of tell us what the win or learn mentality is?
Sure. The winner learn mentality really is just approaching life, all the things that you're doing from the standpoint of you either win, you succeed, you have that success, great, awesome, or maybe you fail. Maybe you don't get that success or the expectation that you were hoping for. Well, instead of losing, you choose to learn from the mistakes. What caused the failure? looking at the situation. What was the environment? What were the variables? What were we trying to accomplish? What was the goals? Analyze it and look at it and say, okay, now that we have all the facts on the situation, what can I pick up from these facts to better situate myself for future moments?
Yeah. Why I love the win or learn mentality is it's actually a very strategic mindset. It is all about moving forward.
Yes.
When I'm talking about beating myself up, when we're talking about quicksand, when we're talking about sitting at the the bottom of the vibrational scale, when we're talking about wearing that depression blanket, when we're talking about really just wallowing or sitting in that cycle of almost self-abuse, right? Where you're just constantly telling yourself what a, excuse my language, but what a piece of shit you are. And I've had that inner monologue. I had it most of my life. I was able to kind of overcome it for the most part. And then when the chips are down and it comes back, one, I want to say thank you for bringing that up, because that's what transformation is. First of all, transformation is not linear. It's not, hey, wow, look, I transformed. I learned a lesson. Now I'm better. Woohoo. I'm never going to go back there again. It's a cycle, right? It's you learn the lessons, you implement them, you take a step back, you remember the tools, you remember the lesson, you try again, and you continually work on yourself, right? And you make mistakes. And that's why the win or learn mentality is so important, because we're going to be talking about next week why it's so important to celebrate, right? Because the holidays are coming up and things like that. But, you win and you celebrate that win and you succeed, or you learn. And that all of a sudden takes the word failure out. I know you use the word fail in the definition, but it almost takes that word failure out of your definition. It's like, okay, hey, I win, or hey, this didn't break my way. So now I'm learning. I'm learning what went right, what could have gone better, and I'm giving myself the opportunity, right? That's the exciting part. I'm giving myself the opportunity to not do it this way again in the future. And I think that's really important, and it's strategic, because now you're creating a better version of yourself for the future, right?
I completely agree. I mean, we need to be able to see failure not as an endpoint. Failure is not an endpoint. It's just a reset point. Failure is just the point where you get to hit that reset button and say, all right, let's do it again.
Yeah. And that's exciting.
It is to me.
And I think sometimes I lose that, right? Like having to start over, having to restructure, having to reprioritize, having to streamline things, or redo things a new way. It does at first glance feel overwhelming. And how am I going to do this? I'm exhausted. I'm burnt out. How am I going to, but there's excitement in that.
It can be, if you notice, if you can remember the tools that you've already picked up along the way, it can be very exciting, because the psyche, when we quote unquote start over, wants to perceive us as being at the same spot.
But
We're not. It wants to perceive you as starting from ground zero, level 1, all over again, right? But the fact is you've already beaten level 10. It just so happens that level 11 looks a lot like level 1. And that's the thing that people don't realize, is that life builds upon itself. It's like, it's almost like a mathematical formula, right? You can't do a quadratic equation if you don't know how to plus, minus, multiply, and subtract and divide.
Yeah.
And that's really what we're getting the opportunity now to do. It's, hey, you mastered the lesson at the easier level. Great job. Now it's coming back around. It's going to be tougher. Can you do it again? Can you do it when it's harder? Can you be more attentive to your process?
And that actually brings me to another point about lessons. I feel like lessons will repeat. And I've heard, most of us have heard this, right? Lessons will repeat until you learn them.
I think even after you learn them, they're going to repeat on you.
Yeah, right? because there's more things to learn about them, right? And I tend to find, I'll learn the lesson, or I'll forget, or I won't implement, or whatever, and then that lesson will come back. And it's just like what you said, you feel like you're back at ground zero, or maybe it's an older version of yourself that kind of gets either triggered or brought up, or that wants to feel some emotions. But it's really exciting because we need to remember we're new versions of ourselves with new tools, new lessons that we've learned, new I don't know, just new tools, new skills. It's really exciting. But a lot of times the emotional part of us, the inner child part of us, gets so scared, like, oh gosh, here I am again having to do it. But it's a good reminder that we're not back at ground zero, like you said. We've leveled up. We are leveled up versions of ourselves that get to tackle the problem again with fresh perspective.
The thing is, the reason why it's hard is because you're having to use new tools, maybe sometimes multiple tools at one time. Whereas maybe on that previous level, you only had to use one or two tools and it worked out for you. It was good and you were able to win. But this time around, now you need to use two or three in conjunction with one another. And that's how you see success this time around.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. All right, let's take a quick break. I want to go read our little ad real quick, and then I want to come back and talk about some quick ways that our listeners can start implementing this win or learn mentality today and into the new year, so that right now, right, so that they can stop beating themselves up if they are too. So let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. If you're ready for a transformation and you're not sure where to start, we always suggest looking at where your money comes from, right? Your career funds the rest of your life. If you're feeling burnt out, stagnant, or unfulfilled in your career, that can easily start to bleed over to the rest of your life. Most high achievers and leaders are great at what they do, but when it comes to finding that next level or a company that aligns with their values, attempting a job search can be frustrating at least and demoralizing at most, especially in a job market like today. The traditional job search of submitting your resume to job boards only yields about a 2% ROI when it comes to interviews. It can leave job seekers feeling anxious, rejected, and with feelings of imposter syndrome. At Optimized Career Solutions, we want to help transform your job search. We help by giving you the branding on your resume and LinkedIn profile that sets you apart as the industry leader or professional you are. But we don't stop there. We give you the proven strategies that empower you to be the leader you are in your career within your job search by getting directly connected to decision makers and teaching you how to tell your impactful story to leaders at companies you're excited to work with. Book your free consultation either with myself or Jack at bit.ly/call OCS. That's bit.ly/call OCS. On this free call, we will dive deeper into your career goals with you and show you how we can support you in achieving them without the frustration and rejection most job seekers feel, while transforming your mindset and gaining invaluable skills you'll use throughout the rest of your career. The first step to the next chapter in your career is just a couple clicks away. Book your free consultation with us now at bit.ly/call OCS. That's bit.ly/call OCS. All right, welcome back. So the win or learn mentality, the win or learn mindset, it has been transformative for us throughout this year as we've gone through some really, really, really tough times, medically, professionally, personally, just a lot of tough stuff. And it really helped us get some fresh perspective on seeing the situations that we were in from a more zoomed out outside perspective, which was really great without getting personal. Now, of course, like we talked about at the beginning of the show, we're humans, we're transforming and we're learning as we go. And it's really easy to forget our tools and to slip back into old patterns. That's just what human nature is, right? And so if you're feeling that way, especially as the holidays are approaching, let this be a reminder for you that it doesn't always have to be that way. A mistake or a failure or a misstep or anything XYZ, right, is a chance for you to learn a lesson, to see an opportunity and be able to move on from that, right? And give yourself the opportunity to not do it that way again. So, Jack, when we were implementing this at the beginning of this year, almost a year ago, which is wild to me, what were some of the first steps that we took in order to start implementing the win or learn mentality?
It really it really became crystallized when we started viewing the things that we had to do just factually, just not assigning emotions to the outcomes of what's happening. And it's like you had mentioned the zoom out mentality, and it's really being able to have that lens to be able to zoom in, what's the thing, what's going on, but also when something doesn't necessarily go how you hope, zoom out, get all the facts, get the situation, and just move on to the next opportunity. I found that it was a little difficult at first to start because with the win or learn mentality, the psyche wants to jump in really quickly,
Mm,
right? Every time something doesn't go right, it wants to jump in and give its opinion. But by controlling how I viewed the situation and not allowing my personal feelings to get wrapped up in what's happening and just say, this is happening. Okay. How do I need to operate to be able to succeed moving forward? And it's really kind of just looking at the facts, analyzing what's happening, the situation, where do you want to go? Where are you currently? And not placing expectation or judgment on the outcomes,
yeah,
but putting the intention behind the effort to do what you need to do well.
yeah. Here are some tips that I used when we first started doing this, because I very easily can go to, ooh, I can catastrophize. I'm like, not only am I mess up in this situation, but I'm a mess up, and all of this stuff, right? And so whenever I would make a mistake or whenever I would mess up, the first thing that I would ask myself is, okay, what can I learn from this? And obviously that's the point of this mindset. But in order to get myself to stop beating myself up, is I would start picturing, and to get myself into thinking about what can I learn from this, is I would start picturing you actually in the situation, or someone else in the situation that I really loved and cared about. Because frankly, and I know that a lot of our listeners can probably relate to this, is a lot of times we would never, ever talk to someone we love the way we talk to ourselves. Ever. I would never, right? And so when I was starting to look at the situation or the mistake or whatever, um, more logically instead of emotionally, I would picture, okay, what happened as if this was someone else? If it was someone I loved, or someone, even a stranger, someone that I have no emotion toward whatsoever, if this was just me entering in as a consultant, what could we learn here? And I removed myself from the situation completely. Okay, someone did something. What could I learn here if I were just coming in fresh? And that helped me remove my emotions from the situation and help me just look at the situation as a situation, not as me being the person who messed up or made a mistake or did something. Um, and that helped me kind of get into more of a logic type mentality when it came to any time I messed up with something or made a mistake or things didn't break the way, not just for me, but for anyone in the business. It was okay, hey, something happened. Great, let's take a look at it. What can we learn from it? And then we moved on from it. And I was able to really divorce my emotions from mistakes very easily. And actually, now that we're talking about this, that's a really good tip. Like, I'm going to start moving forward with some of the stuff that's been happening now and recently, because for me, processing my emotions, that's one thing that I need to do. And that's a very personal thing that I need to do. And I enjoy doing that because then I'm able to move forward. But processing things that happen in the business for me is very logical. I need to be logical so that I can move forward and make decisions as the CEO. And when I get those two things combined, it's difficult for me to make decisions. And so being able to look at things in the business as if, okay, what would I do if I were a consultant coming into someone else's business? That helps me actually very well.
I love that you mentioned that. I didn't even think to bring that up. It was almost like a step I skipped over when I was explaining what to do. I love the idea of picturing yourself as another or as another person, because especially a loved one,
Mhm.
right? Because or even somebody you don't know, because typically we treat people that we don't know, we treat people that we love with respect. We want them to be okay, and that's the same thing you ultimately want for yourself in a tough situation, right?
Yeah.
You want to be okay on the other end of it.
Mhm.
So I love that.
Yeah. So we are works in progress, obviously, as everyone is. And we're going to be adopting this again, readopting this as we move into 2023, so that we can move forward. We found that this mentality, this mindset has been really great for finding opportunities to make things better, not only in our personal life and in our professional life, but to be able to move past things, and to love ourselves a little bit more, to not continually beat ourselves up. So this is something that I'm personally going to be adopting now and moving forward. And we hope that you are too. And we'd love to hear your thoughts on this. So please feel free to sound off. We are on Instagram at the Denison Download. We're also on Facebook. Our Facebook page is the Denison Download Podcast. We're also on YouTube. Check us out. You can watch us. Hello to everyone watching on YouTube. You can watch us record our episode. Check us out. You can also check us out on all of the major podcasting platforms, Apple, Spotify, etc. We would love for you to rate us a 5-star rating. We check and review all of them. We really appreciate it. And we will be back next week. So from our family to yours, have a fantastic week, and we'll see you next week.
Keep learning.